And the officers show their camera only when presenting reports. I've received no apologies today, so I'll move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is the minutes. We need to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of September. These are on pages 3 to 8 of your agenda pack. Are members happy that they're a true record? Thank you. Question time. I've received no questions from members of the public. Questions asked by members are agenda item number 3 under standing orders sections 7.3 and 7.5. Again, I've received no questions from members. Item 4, urgent items. I have not been notified of any urgent items on the agenda. Item 5, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest in respect of any items on this agenda this morning? No, thank you. Item 6, presentation of petitions under standing orders 35. There are no petitions to present today. So we'll move on to item 7, which is our first report, which is the Pay Awards 23-24 on pages 9 to 12. Sarah Short, the HR Services Manager, will present the report, and Gordon McFarlane, Assistant Director, will also provide a verbal update on the National Living Wage increase and next year's pay awards. Yourself, Sarah, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of the report is to seek approval from Employment Committee for the implementation of the 2022-24 pay awards for staff on National Joint Council and Chief Exec's terms and conditions. I'll start with the NJC pay award first. So the national employers agreed an increase of £1,925 in for employees on NJC terms and conditions, and then a further 3.88% increase for those who are between the top of the national pay spine and below the grade of chief officers. So for Leicestershire, the 1,925 is up to and including grade 13, and the 3.88% increase is for grades 15 to 17. In terms of the national living wage, and Gordon's going to speak a little bit more about this in a minute, the national living wage has been announced now from the 1st of April 2024. That is going to be at £11.44, which is in excess of the previous Low Pay Commission estimate, and I'm sure Gordon will speak a bit more about that in a minute. National employers are now due to enter into informal discussions regarding the pay spine, because that increase in the national living have quite significant implications for how we move forward with that now. But no timetable as yet has been announced for those discussions to take place. Although the national employers usually start holding regional employer briefings in January. In terms of the pay award, back pay on regular pay is being paid in December, with some allowances. The back pay is being paid in January. Then in terms of the Chief Executive's pay award, again, the national employers agreed increase of 3.5%, and again, that was December. The cost of the pay bill is in the report, and again, I think I'll touch on this, and there's a 1.6 million difference between the contingency that was set aside and the amount that the pay award was cost. So at this point, you to comment?
Sure. I just mentioned the table.
Sorry, yeah, so trade unions expect to submit a pay claim in the new year. There'll then be regional pay briefings from the employers' side, and they'll consider the feedback, respond to the claim, and then kind of hope that it will be quicker than this year because it's been unnecessarily elongated. It's been very difficult for people to wait to December to get their back pay. But I think we're in a more complex situation where perhaps different models may need to be presented, but that's kind of my assumptions. So I think the external influencing factors on the national employers and the negotiations are actually post 2024. What will the national living wage policy be? Because the government have achieved their stated objective of getting to 60% of the median. They will probably consider a new policy on national living wage, and we'll have to try and anticipate that going forward. Local and general elections will inevitably be a factor. Trade Unions Congress have a stated objective of getting to £15 national living wage as soon as possible. So you can see that will kind of inform their pay claim. Their starting point may be, and then there's, we've still got relatively high inflation, albeit falling, and high cost of living, and looking at what other public sector settlements would be. So it's as ever a complex picture, but probably more complex than it's been. But I think we say that every year. So that's probably all I can say on kind of the crystal ball gazing at this point.
It's interesting. I think the last 3 or 4 years, they've always been protracted, the wage negotiations. They've always been delayed coming up to Christmas before the back pay has sort of happened, apart from when it was a multi-year deal. I think they did it, that was fixed and that was easy to do. But it was just good to see. I mean, obviously, Prudency put 10.1 million in the central contingency when we looked at this. I know a lot of districts only put sort of 3%, thinking that they wouldn't get the 1925 again. So there's some districts and boroughs will struggle. So, okay, thank you for that. Do any members have any questions or comments? In that case, we're asked to approve the implementation of the 23-24 pay awards for NJC staff and chief executives. Does everyone agree? Okay, thank you. Thank you for that report. Second item on the agenda is the attendance management on pages 13 to 20 of the agenda pack. Andrea is here to present the report, our HR business partner. So, Andrea, over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update the committee this morning on the sickness absence position at the end of September, which is Q2 for 2023-24, and also to provide some details of the corporate attendance management communications campaign, which we launched on the 10th of November this year. The attendance management policy, which supports this work, there are no changes to that policy. At the last committee, which was in September, we reviewed the Q1 position, which was the end of June, just for information. So the table that is at the bottom of page 13 shows the absence position for the last 5 years, the end of year position, also the Q1 position that we looked at the last committee, and the new position, which is the end of Q2 September. And also for the Q2 position, we've got the total FTE days lost for that 12-month period, and also a total cost for that 12-month period as well, which is what we usually present to the committee. Over the page, I've also provided some commentary on that table. Also, you've got the ESPO and the EMS figures over onto page 14. So at the end of Q2, you'll see that the chief executives and the public health departments are below our corporate target, which we know is 7.5 days per FTE. The children and families services and public health departments made some improvements between Q1 and Q2. We're currently at the end of Q2 at 9.8 days, FTE days lost per FTE, and we still have obviously a considerable amount of work to work towards that corporate target of 7.5. Then moving on to point 8, we look at our range of corporate reasons for absence, and again this is a table that we usually look at our top 10 reasons for absence, and also that not disclosed category, which we also look at because we're looking to trend that over the 12 months, and we've obviously committed to moving that down and improving that figure to reduce that. So at point 9, I've given some commentary. The mental health category, we have seen a slight increase of 0.1% between Q1 and Q2. Obviously, this remains our main reason for lost time. We know this from previous committees. Over at the page, we also discussed at the previous committee around our commitment to reducing the amount of not disclosed absence. Obviously, we're carrying out a range of activity across our services to improve the recording of time, because that figure is over a 12-month period. It will be reduced over a period of time as we improve that figure. So what I'm currently looking at is making sure that that figure is coming down. I'm seeing a healthy reduction every quarter in that figure, and that I hope the committee will be pleased to see. Obviously, over the 12-month period from making that commitment, we would look to see that reduce further and further. Also at the last committee in September, there was a specific request for us to bring some information around reasons for absence across the different departments from members. So I've included this table. So I've brought the top 10 reasons for absence and also the not disclosed category, and then I've shown that across the different departments to give you a flavour of how this looks across the organisation. And then at point 12, I've given you just a summary of what the differences are. So as you'll see, Chief Executive's Department, the leading cause of absence in that area is musculoskeletal instead of mental health, so that is a difference. Children and families, their percentage of mental health absence is obviously a lot higher than the council average at 42.5%. And in corporate resources, we have a greater percentage of not disclosed absence than the average. So obviously those are targeted areas for activity that we look at. So I'm sure there are other things that you may see within those figures, but those are things that I particularly noticed when I looked across that information. Over to point 6, page 16, we have the long and short-term absence split, which looks very familiar and is the pattern that we usually see, which is the majority of our absence is the long-term absence, that balances obviously with the short term, and then we go on to point 14 where we break down at service level, and we can see where over the year ends and then also Q1 and Q2 where those absence FTE per FTE figures show across all of the different services, and I'm sure you'll all have particular interest in the areas that you particularly work with. Where those may have gone up and down between Q1 and Q2. Over onto page 18, I wanted to give you some more detailed information around some of the activity that we're undertaking. So we've been carrying out a corporate attendance management communications campaign, and I wanted to give you all a flavour of what does that look like and what does that involve, what are the messages that we're actually giving to individual managers. So we launched in November to support reductions in sickness across the council. The focus of the campaign is around prevention and well-being. Obviously, if we can stop people becoming sick, if we can stop them going off with absence in the first place, and if we can support people's well-being and resilience, that will be the key to us not having sickness absence within the figures that I've presented in the earlier part. The message to our senior managers that we outlined at our launch in November, our senior managers briefing, was around consistent and proactive management to that target of 7.5 or keeping it below. Some of our departments are already, from the figures that you've seen regularly, are already below that. So pushing below that or pushing to that target, depending on where they are within the organisation. Role modelling and supporting positive well-being and being the face of that, ensuring that we're getting the basics right, one-to-ones, team meetings, annual performance reviews, mandatory training being completed, making sure that we're getting all those fundamentals in place. It's a big system, and attendance management is part of that. And seeking advice and taking action to address issues with wellbeing and attendance, and making sure that their managers are doing that within their areas of management. We also delivered a Manager's Digest special, which I'm going to come to at the end of this section, if that's okay, Damien. Was shared with managers. The messages were delivered by video, and also detailed our current absence position. There were a list of actions within that message, but also a curated list of links, which made it very easy for managers to be able to go, actually, these are the things that we need you to do. And actually, if you click on this link, it will take you through to all the guidance and all the people that you need to connect with to be able to get all these things done, and something that they can bookmark because it's all on the intranet ready for them to go back to should they need it in a week's time, in a month's time, not something that's going to go off their page and they'll never find again. And I'm going to come back to you at the end of this point and show you the video and the page just for some illustration. We also put together a staff message, which we have a monthly wellbeing bulletin, which delivers a range of wellbeing messages, but there was a specific message around attendance management. Again, myself and Gordon produced a video for that. And the key messages around that was what our wellbeing offer is, how to access it, about our message around making sure that people communicate with their manager, keeping in contact with them, asking their manager for help, and also a clear explanation of what to expect if they do need to take time away from work because they have illness. And then this was all backed up with direct emails from managers to their workforce around these messages are all coming out. Please access them, please engage with them, because we find that directors' emails really do have an impact in terms of actions with staff. So I'm going to ask Damien now if he can.
The television's not working. I've just been told it's not working. I'm really sorry. I can share it with members after the meeting and circulate the link as well.
Yeah. What's going to be shared is there is a video, curated links and the video. Oh, sorry, is that? Oh, it's fine. Yeah, it's the Manager's Digest that I wanted to share with you, so you can really see, because it's our middle manager cohort. They're the people that have the most impact with attendance management. They're the people that we're asking to do the most action, and they have the most influence over people. So I thought that was probably the most useful of these messages that we could share. So that would be really great. Thank you very much. So in terms of recommendations, I'm asking the committee to note our current position on attendance management at the end of September Q2, and also to note the current communications campaign that we've undertaken, which will be a basis for our current team and then following up all of those messages with managers going forward.
Thank you for that. Just before I take questions from members, I mean, obviously the target is 7.5 and we're on 9.8, so obviously that's going the wrong direction. So the communications campaign, was it beginning of November? Was it mid-November? So it's obviously we hope that will have some impact, and it'll be interesting to see if staff are listening to sort of the middle managers, and obviously messages and emails from directors as well to see if that has an impact. It's obviously needed. I mean, the only thing you're up against at the moment is obviously the wave of colds and coughs that are decimating schools and public offices across all authorities and all areas at the moment. So that's got an impact badly on your figures. But Gordon, did you just want to say something before I take questions?
Yeah, a couple of things if I could, Chair. I just hope that report provides a level of assurance that we're doing everything we can. And I think the communications and engagement campaign is something that actually we'd planned to put in place when COVID hit, and it didn't feel like the right time to do that. So I think bringing this back out and really pushing it hard, but in a supportive, proportionate way is the right thing to do. I just wanted to paint a slightly wider picture. Because earlier in the year there was a CIPD survey, so Chartered Institute of Personnel Development. They surveyed just short of 1,000 organisations, all sectors, covering about 6.5 million employees, looking at sickness absence levels, reasons, trends, etc. What they found was that, and this is not an excuse for our high figures, this is just wider context, but that pre-pandemic, the average across all sectors was something like 5.8 days. As at earlier this year, that had risen to about 7.8 days. So it had gone up an average across all sectors of 2 days per full-time equivalent. The report is quite detailed. There's a breakdown of reasons, short-term and long-term, probably very similar to our own reasons. And the report kind of says this is despite most of those, if not all, doing as much as they can in terms of preventative and well-being work. So I wasn't proposing to go into any more detail than that. But I think perhaps the context is helpful for us just in terms of understanding. And as you say, Chair, yeah, we will get spikes. This year's round of etc. is potentially worse than this time last year, because that's what we're comparing to. But that longer term trend is just worth noting.
Okay, thank you. Right, I've got Barry, then I've got Peter, then I've got Bertie at the moment, and then Trevor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the addition of this comparison of absence table has been really useful. I mean, I asked for it last time round so we could get an understanding of departments, etc. The thing that really stands out from this, and also it was about trying to find out, is it happening at home that's causing problems, or are we causing the problem? We can actually understand that. And I think, this stress level on children and families at 42.5%, very high compared to everything else. I mean, normally as you go up the pay grade, you get paid more because the stresses are greater. And in fact, our chief executives have much less stress than our staff appear to. What's the reasoning behind? I mean, I understand I've got family members that work in other councils. I understand very much what they're dealing with, and I can understand that. But is it just down to the problems that you're dealing with? Is it down to funding, in that if you haven't got the funding that you need to do the things that you want, it creates more stress and stuff? What are we looking into? Because that is such a high figure compared to every other department. There are various other little anomalies here and there, but that's the one that really stands out the most to me. I just would like a bit more information on that.
If I start just with some broad observation that Andrew's business partners, children, so may be able to add something here. But I think in terms of just the reality around frontline service delivery, and if you take, the very difficult, complex stuff that our children's social workers do, just as an example, there's obviously lots of other roles within children's, but just using that as an example. So in terms of high workloads, higher than average turnover, the vacancies that we've had, impact of cost of living, etc., that's a really difficult, stressful area. It's also well managed, well supported. There's always another side, a side to that. And I think also, again, using social work as an example, with some of the national changes that are coming down the line, we'll see a different model coming into play, and the balance between qualified and unqualified or differently qualified social work staff, which may help to ease things in the future. So I think there's probably a whole conversation around that, but I think the simple message would be The pressures around frontline service delivery are great. Anything you want to add?
In children's, there are a number of factors. There's never one reason in nature of the work is emotionally demanding. I think we've got in Children and Families Department, we have huge SEND demand. We have obviously children's social care. I think when we look at the casework, it's not all work-related stress. It is very much a mix of people having demands from all areas who get to a place where they have mental health issues and they need to take time away from it. I think that the nature of children's social care.
Yeah. The thing is, now we've got these figures in front of us. Obviously, that's the sort of what I'm going to be looking at. And what I'm interested in is what we're doing. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying and how difficult it is, but I mean, it comes down to also making sure that the staff that you have are the right fit for the job that they're doing. I mean, I expect special forces is quite a stressful job to do, but if you put the wrong people into it, you're not going to be able to achieve. And if these high figures, if you're taking on the wrong people, are then impacted greatly by what they're doing, causing problems with their health. So we've got to look at it on the whole. We're actually capable of doing it. Because I'd hate to think that someone that would be more subjected to the problems that would have a much greater stress, and it would affect them in their personal life, etc. Look at it. It's I mean, it's easy to say these are the reasons, but it's still 42.5%, which is.
Caroline.
Yeah, just to say, Amy, I don't want to put you on the spot, and obviously I just have, so apologies for that. But we have put in some specific support from our health, safety and wellbeing team. We ran a specific project to really work with who were prepared to identify as suffering from stress factors. And I think it's fair to say, Amy, that piece of work was really successful, because what came from it was an action plan that we did share with managers to do undertake some specific actions with those individuals. So we have really recognised that as being, a clear issue, and as a consequence, we did put in specific support. I think it was about 2 or 3 days a week for a 6-month period. So we are doing, again, everything we possibly can to help support that particular area, but completely accept that, yes, right person, right job, that has to be part of it and part of those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just keep looking at that figure as it comes back and just keep the table in there. It's really interesting.
Peter.
Chair, just a few points really. In terms of answer them. The point about 9.8 FTE days lost, I think the private sector is currently at 5.7, which is probably the blended average of two of the public and private sector. But I suppose our ambition should be to get that much lower than it is. We're at 9.8 and our target 7.5. If we were to achieve our target, we would shave 1.2 million notional kind of value of the days lost that we've got, and clearly we're in a very tight financial situation, so efficiencies everywhere, including in days lost to sickness, is something that we should be focusing on. In terms of the data in table 4, notice that highways or environment and transport is particularly high compared to other departments over recent years. I just wondered, is there a cultural issue there being done to address those high levels of FTE days lost compared to other departments? Going over to paragraph 11, it's really helpful to see in one place the kind of various causes of lost days against the different departments. I guess for context, it might be helpful just to get the kind of proportionality of those different departments. So, for example, I know the Chief Executive's department is very small compared to Environment and Transport and the Children's department. So when you've got big number fluctuations. It's probably 2 or 3 people rather than tens of people changing. So I don't know, maybe for context in the future, worth getting even if it's not an exact number, but an approximate number on functionality of each of those directorates, and that will give a bit better visibility of the fluctuations. And I think Barry's already made the point around stress that I was going to pull out in terms of, I wasn't surprised to see children and families as the highest because of the nature of the jobs, frontline, very difficult situations, dealing with challenging situations. So I'm not surprised at all that was the kind of primary cause there. Just a final point around skeletal issue with the Chief Executive's department. And I was just kind of commenting, it's a small department, so that 25% is probably a couple of people as opposed to being tens and hundreds of people. I wonder what's being done, targeted things like that. So, okay, well, department sticking out compared to other departments. Do we need to provide better chairs or whatever to staff in your department to help bring down those figures and reduce the lost days? Thank you.
Start with the Chief Executive's department. In terms of the musculoskeletal, those were planned operations. In terms of the musculoskeletal, Chief Executive's department, they are under the in terms of the long-term absences, which is where which up at cases. They're usually very small numbers, but they did over the summer period this year have a handful of cases of people. It seems to be catching up with some operations that maybe they've put off, and we're starting to see that in some areas. And that musculoskeletal push up is because some people in that area have some. The environment and transport question is very interesting, and I'm actually working with my business partner colleague who leads in environment and transport. Until the last, I would say, 12 months, environment and transport had a different pattern of attendance, and it has, in terms of reasons, and it has had for a very long time. It used to have musculoskeletal as its main reason for time lost. It was very much a backs and necks and things. That would be its reasons for lost time. But in more recent months, stress, mental health has become something that has very slowly grown as a reason for absence in environment and transport. And what my colleague has been doing is trying to get to grips with the managers around what has been the causes of this, and she's doing targeted work with the management team around understanding what the reasons for that are, and we're doing some targeted work with the team in people services that support the managers with attendance management to put on some specific training courses in environment and transport around managing mental health, because this isn't an area that the managers particularly needed to focus on previously, whereas in children's it's been something that we've been managing a really long time and we've got really specialised at it. In environment and transport we haven't really had to do it as much, so what we're doing is we're getting the managers really up to speed really quickly with loads of targeted sessions and loads of really targeted support so we can work on that. So my colleague is really focusing on mental health in environment and transport. And if you speak to the management team, it's really high up their agenda at the moment in terms of wellbeing.
Yeah, I was just going to briefly add to that. I absolutely agree with Andrea, but I think we're also working with a number of services in environment and transport. So we've got transformation unit services in for just to stabilise and help move some services forward. Services that have kind of found themselves with, operational challenges for a range of reasons, and it's not appropriate to go into those in a public meeting. But generally, there's parts of that department which have got high turnover, higher levels of vacancies than we've seen in the past, and those are not exclusively, but can be in a lower grades, so in our waste sites, HGV drivers, etc. So there are some pressures in environmental transport that perhaps they haven't seen to the extent they are now previously, and that probably moves into what Andrew's been talking about.
Okay. Betty.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I think Barry and Peter picked up a lot of the points I was going to raise. The only touched on was on table 11, where we've correlated reasons for absence to the departments. That's just a snapshot at the moment for Q2 effectively for this year. Do we have the data to backdate that immediately so we can look back and see if there's a trend, rather than necessarily waiting 4, 5, 6 meetings so we can start picking up on those trends?
What I can obviously there seems like there's a general interest in this table 11. So what I can do for the next committee is I can bring some trending information at the departmental level. I think that will bring some greater richness to the information. So yes, absolutely, I'll stand that. Lovely.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report. We've got the figures and plenty of them, and that's really healthy because whatever we do should be stats led because that's where we're at. I applaud the campaign and I think that's lovely and it's absolutely right to have done, and I refer to Gordon saying, and as far as we're concerned, we seem to have done everything, you know, that CI, the Chartered Institute, had trawled and said seemed the right thing. Yep. Bullseye, absolutely fantastic. My concern is, are we auditing? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't. Are we targeting our employees? Do we know whether or not they are engaging with the messages in the campaign? Engaging. Can I carry on, Chairman?
Yeah, carry on.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Are we sure that they're we are initially monitoring that they are engaging with that campaign and the messages on their laptops that they can engage and the courses that they can engage with? Because I'm going right back to being as proactive as we can rather than as reactive, because it looks to me as though you're fantastic at the reactive because you follow the stats. Brilliant. I'm just wondering how far we can go back now to making sure, and it goes to the same point that was mentioned earlier, found eggs in square holes and this sort of thing. How good are we at being as spot on at getting our employees in the right place and the right employees in the right place? Could do another one, but I'll stop there because that's complicated enough, and thank you.
Okay, I'll start again and welcome Andrea coming in. I think in terms of the square pegs, round holes, or round peg, round holes, I'll stop there. I think we're pretty good at getting the right fit. I think we've done a lot of work recently on quality of recruitment. We know we're in a difficult market, but the advice to managers is never compromise on quality. So even if you're desperate and you've got any number of vacancies, benchmark is here, quality benchmark is here, don't go below that. Yes, a point on potential, etc. But that's very different from lowering your standards, if you like. So I think generally we are good at how we describe our jobs to the market and getting the right fit. Not being naive about it, there are huge pressures on people. And we've talked about those in other answers. But I think in terms of the comms campaign and whether people are engaging in the message, I think we need to keep the campaign going. It's great. Some messages go out, appear in an inbox, and then disappear. They're on the intranet, and then something else takes over. So we need to be fairly persistent about it. I think reality is we'll get a mixed reaction, or we have got a mixed reaction. Majority of people absolutely get it. There will be some people who say this is an additional pressure. Of course we want to work. Of course we're trying to stay at work. Look at all the other pressures that we're under, etc. And now you're giving these messages out. Don't be naivety or whatever. But I think there's still the right messages to give, and we've worked hard to try and put them out in a measured and supportive way. whilst trying to get some clear expectations across as well. So there's messages for employees. There's then, as Andrew said, there's messages, support, guidance, etc. for managers. And we will continue to work with managers through the HR function to make sure they're doing what they need to do, despite all the other pressures.
If I pick up from a compliance point of view, so I've got a number of layers of compliance with all of these messages. So I've got business partners who take monthly and quarterly reports to DMTs to make sure that we're having conversations about how we're performing with our rates and reasons for absence, and making sure we're taking targeted actions to intervene and improve. And then with managers directly, we have a performance management team within People Services where we have a particular role where we follow up things. So we have triggers within our attendance management procedure. So if people have short-term triggers, so if they hit a particular trigger, we have an individual who goes out and contacts managers to make sure that they followed up those situations. And then there's an escalation procedure if they don't. And then also for long-term cases, those are followed up with the performance management advisors. So I have compliance and escalation routes, which are hugely complicated, and they'd probably take another hour to go through them all in detail. But I have, in terms of compliance with our attendance management policy, I have lots of different people at different levels making sure that we have compliance with all the different areas. Is it a perfect system? I'm sure you could find holes in it somewhere, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Is it a fair system? I think it is a fair system. Obviously, we have a lot of rigour. We have our trade unions involved in making sure that our policies and procedures are fair. We have obviously occupational health involved in making sure that we manage our processes correctly and fairly as we go through. The messages that we have produced and sent out reinforce the system that we have there. We also have attendance management training for managers, which is part of our mandatory training completion, mandatory training suite. We've recently, following this campaign, my team has put on some more dates because we are pushing that course. It's currently about 75% complete. We are going to get that 100% complete by February. We're going to get all the managers through it. We always get new managers, but we are pushing it because we want all the managers through. We want to make sure that we're getting everybody up to the same level of knowledge. So, yeah, we're really going, compliance is really important with this policy.
It's interesting. I mean, if you look at the 45,000 days lost between sort of one financial year 22-23, I mean, that's just a hell of a thing for colleagues in departments to try and catch up. And we can't always get replacements in or temporary staff to cover it. We can maybe with a long term, but that's a huge amount. And obviously we talk about the times we're in, the austere and dire times, and you look at the fact that people always said local authorities had fat and they had capacity, but we don't anymore. And I think it obviously affects everything that we're seeing through the authority at the moment. So it is good work. I mean, I look forward to seeing the links to the campaign. Obviously, I'm sorry you weren't able to show them today. So that will be useful for members. So if that can go out, so I've made a note of that. And thank you for your questions as always. Question raising report, but it's good to see that we're on top of it. Also the compliance list sounds interesting, your levels of compliance, and we have to do that. So it's and we're asked to note the update provided on the council's overall position on sickness absence as at the end of September 23. So does everyone agree? Thank you. Item 9 is the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Annual Report 22-23 on pages 21 to 54 of the agenda pack. Amy, our Senior Health and Safety and Wellbeing Advisor, is going to present the report for us. Amy, good morning.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So the purpose of the report is to present to Employment Committee the Annual Health, Safety and Wellbeing Report for 2022 to 23. This details the Council's overall position on health, safety and wellbeing and provides an update on the performance of the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Service. A copy of the report is attached as Appendix 1. The report is written in a summary format to give an overview of the issues. The following aspects of the health, safety and wellbeing are covered in the report, including accident data, RIDDOR incidents, health and safety audits, enforcement action, wellbeing update, corporate wellbeing update, training statistics, corporate objectives and legislative changes. I'll talk through a couple of the highlights of the report. So looking at page 4 of the appendix, the numbering at the bottom of the page, you can see that in 2022 to 23, there were 800 injuries reported on our corporate accident reporting system and a total of 325 near misses. The number of injuries has slightly reduced compared to the previous year, and the number of near misses, we're pleased to see, has increased by 21%. And that can be attributed to the near miss campaign that the health and safety team have worked hard to push out throughout the council. We have seen an increase in the number of RIDDOR reportable incidents, which are the ones that we have to report to the HSE, which has increased by 38% compared to the previous year. The proportion of the increase was mainly seen within the Corporate Resources Department and the Environment Transport Department. However, on a positive note, we have seen that the number of slip, trips and fall incidents has fell by 15%, and also the number of injuries caused by violence and challenging behaviour also fell by a small percentage. On page 5, starting on page 5 and continuing through the next couple of pages, you can see the number of RIDDOR reportable incidents that we sent off to the HSE. I won't go through all of these, but what we do in the health and safety team is we complete accident investigations for all RIDDOR reportable incidents, looking at the root cause of the incident, and we also produce a accident investigation report which is sent to the managers, identifying a number of improvements to rectify the issues raised. Looking at page 10, you can see the number of health and safety audits that were conducted by the health and safety team. So these are looking at the health and safety management system and how well the different team or the school is complying with the LCC management system. We did identify a number and a range of major and minor non-conformities as part of these audits, but also a lot of positive things were also identified. I have included a list of some of the common findings of these audits, and we have plans in place to address those issues raised with each of the teams that we audited. Looking at page 13 of the appendix, you can see the training statistics. Just to pull out the 3 mandatory courses, which is mandatory for staff across all departments, which is the introduction to health and safety, management of health and safety, and DSC, which is display screen equipment, which is mandatory for staff that use computer equipment for periods of an hour or more continuously. You can see the percentage figures of completion and compliance, which was taken in April 23. Some of these are lower than we would like to see. We would like to see all departments at 100%. So we do have sort of plans in place and working closely with DMTs across all departments to help improve compliance in those areas. And we are also continuously looking at reviewing our courses with the learning and development team to improve how they are and make them easier for staff to complete, but still maintaining the sort of legal requirements that we have to fulfil as part of those courses. Page 15 gives you an overview of the wellbeing activity. So this is the number of referrals and number of sessions undertaken by the internal counselling and wellbeing service. You can see that there were a total of 315 new referrals into the service and 2,863 sessions. The number of referrals is a very slight decrease compared to the previous year, but that has remained quite steady. However, you can see a slight increase in the number of sessions that were undertaken by the service, and this can be attributed to the fact that the service has quadrupled the number of slots available of the pause to talk sessions. So these are the 30-minute sessions that an employee can book to have a chat with a counsellor, and it's not about signing up to a full scheme of 6 to 8 sessions of counselling. And what we've seen is by increasing the number of pause to talk sessions, staff can have that conversation with a counsellor, and then they feel in a lot of cases they don't then need the longer term counselling. So we've been able to reduce that waiting list for the counsellors. So just to conclude, so this report has shown that the number of injuries reported by the council has reduced by 8% compared to the previous year. However, the number of RIDDOR reportable incidents has increased. There is a huge amount of work that's been undertaken by the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Service to help improve the health and safety standards across the council. You can see that we undertook a huge amount of audits during the reporting year. And also work has been undertaken to launch a new accident investigation training course, which we're encouraging all managers to attend. And also during the reporting year, we signed a contract for the Solo Protect Loan working app, which we have been working throughout this year, pushing it out and rolling out over sort of 1,500 licenses of that loan worker app to staff across all departments. So it's recommended that the Employment Committee notes the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Annual Report and hopefully endorses the work undertaken in partnership with all departments by the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Service to keep the council compliant in this area.
Thank you, Amy. Questions from members? I have Peter first.
Thank you for the report, thank you, Chair. Just a few comments really. 2 meetings ago, I made a comment about compliance around mandatory training, and it's disappointing to see that hasn't really improved in period in between. So I just wondered what was going to happen, what was going to be going on to address that in terms of making sure that all mandatory health and safety type training is undertaken by employees. I mean, certainly in my job, if I'm 1 day late, it's hammered to me by my director that has to be completed. Consequences. Now, I think we need to take a tough line on this because completing mandatory training provides the authority for protection that we've done all weekend to make sure our staff take all the training they need to have taken to be safe and to keep everyone else safe. So if we're falling short with mandatory training, it does concern me, and I think we really need to, go hard on that because there's no excuse for it. In terms of other points, on page 11 of the appendix, I mean, you mentioned some of the kind of common findings in the health and safety. Yeah, I mean, some of that's disappointing to read, obviously, in terms of lack of PAT testing, sufficient risk assessments, that kind of stuff, which is kind of basic stuff, really. So I just wondered what action plans are in place. Again, I think we'd be tough on this. It's okay to train people and to basically be quite soft in saying, this needs to be done. But I think we do need to take quite a robust approach to making sure that compliance is there, because I say it doesn't just protect individuals, but it protects the authority, because we can demonstrate that we're doing all we can do to keep people safe. So I guess in conclusion, I would like to see a bit tougher action in making sure there is compliance and that improves.
Carry on.
Thank you. Yeah, so just in relation, I suppose, to your second point, the some of the things that we've identified in the audit, so PAT testing, a great example. So we have a project ongoing at the moment that we've had approval to centralise the PAT testing system. So currently it's down to individual managers across the different sites and buildings to arrange PAT testing for their teams. And that has created a range of different levels of compliance, which obviously we highlighted in the audits. However, at the moment, we're working closely with property services to centralise that, so that instead of it being down to managers to book their PAT testing in, there will be a contractor that's just sent out on a rota basis. So we're hoping projects like that, and there are a few other to pick up on some of the other issues identified, will help to improve and, like I said, to sort of have a bit of a harder line and hopefully improve compliance going forward. In relation to the training, I completely agree. I think sort of need to absolutely push that. I suppose there's a couple of different approaches that we are tackling at the moment. We're working very closely with the DMTs. We have regular health and safety working group meetings and steering group meetings with all departments, and we're reporting on this data on a quarterly basis in those meetings. This data was taken in April 23. Since then, we have seen a slight increase in some areas, which is positive, but absolutely, I think it's an issue that we would like to sort of continuously work on and help to improve compliance.
Come back.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate, really, that I think it's great that you're working with various managers to drive compliance, but I think it has to be made explicitly clear to employees that this is a fundamental requirement of your role, that you have to complete mandatory training. I mean it's right to have the softly approach, but I think you do need to be quite firm on health and safety matters. Say that this is part of your job, is to complete your mandatory training, and if it's not done, there will be consequences, be that disciplinary action. It has to be that tough in my view.
Before I bring Trevor in, I've got a question from Richard. Gordon just wants to come in on this point. I'll come to you, Trevor. Okay. Thank you.
I was just going to add a quick point around the just to back Amy up around the audits that we do, identifying non-conformities. Detailed action plans are played back to managers. There is an expectation that managers will then take action. We will always find things. We're a complex organisation. We're managing risks. We will always find things that aren't right. The key is that we follow up through meetings, but also that we escalate. It's not just about escalating to an annual report. It's about escalating within services and up the management line to make sure that we see the improvements, because some of what we find means that we're managing significant risk, and if something happens and we haven't taken action, we're on weaker ground in terms of any legal challenge. So there is a robust process in place to follow up and take action.
Thank you, Gordon, for that, and not wishing to accuse anybody of because it's not you, Amy, of ducking the issue. But I ask, let's look at PAT testing. Ever so simple thing. Manager is obliged to make sure that it's done. What is the consequence to that manager if it's not done? I would ever simply say you're in dereliction of duty, because if a piece of equipment suddenly goes dangerous because of non-compliance with a simple PAT test, and that shocks somebody, and then they have a heart attack and they die, who's responsible? My feeling is, if I were to wind that back, the instruction might be for us as corporate responsible and the director. Manager, if you have a PAT tested item that is still being used, you have a problem. You are the problem manager, and you need to take that out of circuit now and make sure that it's not done. Now, that safeguards this county council legally, immediately, because nobody else is dealing with that, if you follow me. So my concern is that managers are, of course, vitally important, helpful to us, but the manager that doesn't manage that is not managing properly and needs an instruction which says you are now responsible. Sorry, Chairman, straight as that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable at all. And I think on PAT testing, I mean, I'll give an example. No, absolutely. I'll give an example that I had a fan in the office, went in one day, where's the fan gone? They've taken it away, it failed the PAT test. Yeah. So action was taken. It wasn't left to me to do anything. But I think in terms, if I broaden it out around performance management and all the this meeting's going quickly. All the responsibilities, PAT testing, all the responsibilities that managers have. I think I'd apply the same criteria. There are a range of responsibilities, whatever they may be, that managers have, and we need to be proportionate in you know, and but also firm in our expectations, whether it be health and safety, management of budgets, management of attendance, delivery of a service, whatever. And we've talked in previous in previous employment committees around, you know, performance management and our expectations, and there's a lot of work that we're doing on that as well. But
I think the clock might be resetting itself, but problem is it's got to go all the way back round. So yeah, enjoy that one. So Richard. My question. Trevor's asked. Sector. 8 are the consequences. In a way, I know I'm perhaps improperly asking.
Through me, you asking
to say in a meeting, but.
Yeah, I mean, so certainly as part of my, I know it's in the finance team I work for, part of my annual appraisal, it will be one of my just core objectives would be to complete all mandatory training. Yeah. If I haven't done that, then I'll get a better appraisal. You'll go against me for my bonus and whatever else. So there's implications for that. There are consequences for training, and you know, we have in the finance team I work for, we have a monthly meeting, and you know, individuals aren't singled out. Teams are held up. If your team isn't complying with the training you're supposed to, then it is made known to the business that you are falling short. So I think there are mechanisms there that's used to make sure that compliance is driven.
Question really. Thank you. Linda, yes, please.
Have we any reasons for the non-compliance? You know, everybody knows that, you know, everything's pressure at the moment. You know, are the reasons for the fact? I know it shouldn't be, but the fact that some people haven't got the PAT testing, but I'm on about people coming away from the work place to do some of these testings that they've got to do. So is there a reason, or is there any reasons behind that you have for taken? That's what I'm trying to do.
Whoever would like to answer it, yes.
Again, can I pick up as a more general point, because I think you're right. We have to look at workloads, expectations, context. You know, what's happening in terms of the demands on a manager. But if I have a manager who is, you know, someone reporting to me who is not performing across a range of areas, some of those are core, some of those are creating risk, etc. The onus is on me to then follow the performance management policy and explore that, set targets, try and improve things, and we do that. But I think context is important as well. And I wouldn't sit here and make excuses for people, because I think coming back to the health and safety mandatory training, it's mandatory for a reason. We're always quite careful and cautious about what we make mandatory, because we could just swamp people and say, oh, it's a really good thing to do, spend the next 3 weeks doing all your online training. There is some that is mandatory for a very good, you know, risk-based reason.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think it does come back to the mandatory training. Some of the issues that we're highlighting in the audit, it might be that manager maybe has mandatory training, and if they had, then they would be more aware of some of the requirements and the responsibilities they have. So I think tackling the mandatory training number one priority, and hopefully then highlighting those things start to improve as that awareness has been really.
You might get off again, Richard. I repeat my thanks to Peter for being clear, 16 matter, but it's helpful to know. Thank you, Peter. And as Peter raised this 2 meetings ago, as you've said, listening carefully, I think I've probably heard, and quite heard definitely yet, with your experience in the private sector, Peter, what exactly are the consequences here? I take what about time, practice, all that Linda mentioned. I do understand that of time, but that the but remains a critical point that Peter made. But I think it's similar to what I said before, but ultimately, if it's a reasonable management instruction and it's not followed, then we've got a mix between a capability issue potentially and a disciplinary issue, ultimately. But yeah, it is. I mean, it's a fine line because, I mean, if you look at your DSE, which is mandatory for all laptop users for over an hour, I mean, we probably all tick the box as members, and I think most people in the authority probably would need to comply with that. But if you look at the people that haven't complied it yet, I mean, obviously, if you go off with an eye problem and they say, did your employer do a mandatory sort of DSE test and you didn't, then that holds us wide open. I'm sure we've got insurance policies that cover us to a point, and we've got good legal teams as well. But it is needed, and I think it's, I mean, I've just added the introduction to HNS, and it comes to about, with those that have completed with the numbers and those that haven't, it comes to about 2,000 people. So presumably they're new into the authority at some point over the period of time that haven't completed. It could be the people who've joined us from COVID, but I think we've got about 900 people that haven't done that course yet, and we've probably got 1,050 in total if I add everyone up across the department. So, you know, there's 900 people out of it, 1,000 have done it, 900 haven't done it, and that aren't complying to that introduction. I'm sure, again, that would hold us open to any claim should something go wrong. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. My only comment, I mean, if I look at the total number of injuries in the annual report, I mean, if we go back to the first report, and it said about the days lost, I mean, I think based on the days lost and the percentage, we as a local authority have 4.5 million days worth of work capacity. So that's how many days that we could potentially have accidents. And I think when you look at the figures that we do, I have to say that, you know, the amount of work that we do as an authority, you know, 800 injuries, 36 RIDDOR incidents. I've looked through them all, and I mean, a lot of them are where people basically forgot they put a box behind them and they fell over and they injured themselves. So it's probably half and half, but, you know, those are the ones that you can't sort of prepare for, because accidents, you know, general accidents will happen. But I think the one for me, I just picked, which is good, is the counselling sessions. I mean, to do 2,863 counsel sessions is really good. I think what I'd look forward to is an update on the sort of training courses, the training statistics, and we need that sooner rather than later, and that's certainly enforced. I mean, I think this sits within corporate resources, so I'll certainly have a word with the lead member and the director of the department and make sure that happens, because without a doubt we need to make sure that we are compliant. So, and it means taking someone off the road or out of the office for the day to make sure it happens. I mean, I presume this training, is it an online training, or is it face-to-face physical?
It's a mixture. The introduction to health and safety is just an e-learning course. Okay. The management of health and safety is an e-learning course followed by a workshop, which is normally conducted online.
I've read that smart. Sure, members agree. Ask any more questions, Trevor?
It was just a comment. If we take on a new employee, Chairman, and we have a residual, I think the employee needs to be told you need to do that within the first month, in the first 2 weeks, within the first week, or whenever, so that is done. Else, what are the consequences? Well, we can't pay you. And that's draconian. I realise that, and that. But the bottom line in the end is, they're going to be an employee that we want to continue to be and act responsibly or not. And now I'm sugarcoating it a bit, but it's a draconian suggestion. But that's it's the bottom line, because insurance and people are at risk here. Thank you, Chairman.
We've done a lot of work recently on corporate induction, and also local induction as well. Clear expectation as part of an induction process that there's a range of things that new staff will do, and that includes mandatory training. If they're new staff to the authority, we also have a 6-month probation period. That's where that's your hook in to monitor performance more broadly.
Okay, thank you. I think we've had a good discussion there. So, and I thank Amy for stepping in. I know Steve was meant to present the report this morning, so obviously he's unavailable. So thank you for that. Thank you for a good report. We are asked to note the Health and Safety and Wellbeing and Annual Report 22-23 and endorse the work undertaken in partnership with the departments by the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Service to keep the council compliant in this area. Does everybody agree? Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Final report today is the Organisational Change Policy and Procedure Action Plans on pages 55 to 60, and Damien, our Democratic Services Officer, will present the report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to present the Employment Committee with an update of the current action plans which contain provision for compulsory redundancy and details of the progress on their implementation. And there's 2 appendices there showing the current and completed action plans. And then just asked to note the contents of the report and the appendices. Thank you.
Everyone agree? Noted. Thank you. Okay, item 11, as mentioned, we don't have any urgent items, so it's just item 12, date of next meeting, the next... Oh, Richard.
Interrupt, but I think probably many members are aware Caroline is approaching retirement, so may I respectfully suggest we might like to record in the minutes our gratitude to Caroline for her long service and all the help she's given us.
I apologise, Caroline, I didn't have that in my notes, but obviously Richard's much shrewder and he's obviously got a much better memory than I have, so it's, yeah, yes, good luck. You'll be missed. So it's okay. Date of next meeting, 1st of February 2024. And thank you all for attending. Thank you to officers for attending. Anyone online, hope you enjoyed this morning's meeting, and Merry Christmas to all. Thank you very much. And it's now 3 o'clock. Finish the meeting. I know. It's weird. I thought it was going to reset itself, go all the way round, but it's,